Jenna stared down the driveway at the heavy chains locking her car in place. Her eyes burned with fury as the smug HOA president sauntered over. This is what you get for not paying your dues on time. Jenna clenched her fists, her heart racing. This wasn't over. Jenna burst through the front door, her husband Mark looking up in alarm. They locked my car in. Can you believe the nerve of those HOA vultures? Mark's brow furrowed with concern. What? Wait, slow down. What happened? I was a few days late on my HOA fees, and those power-hungry jerks decided to chain up my car in the driveway as punishment. Can you believe the audacity? Jenna paced the living room, fuming. That's insane. They can't just do that without warning. Mark stood, reaching for his car keys. Come on, let's go talk to them. Jenna shook her head. No, we need to do more than just talk to them. This is ridiculous overreach, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. Mark hesitated. What are you thinking? You know how vindictive the HOA can be. We don't want to make this any worse. I'm thinking we take them to court. This has to be illegal, and I'm going to make them pay for this stunt. Jenna's eyes narrowed with determination. Jenna, I don't know. Suing the HOA? That's a big risk. They have way more resources than we do. Mark ran a hand through his hair, uncertainty clouding his features. I don't care. They crossed a line, and I'm not backing down. Jenna grabbed her laptop, already searching for local lawyers who specialized in HOA disputes. I'm going to make them regret the day they messed with me. Mark sighed, knowing there was no talking her out of this. All right, I'll support you. But please, let's think this through carefully first. I don't want us to end up in an even worse situation. Jenna nodded, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Don't worry, Mark. I'm not going to let those power-hungry goons win this one. The next morning, Jenna and Mark sat across from a seasoned HOA lawyer, Ms. Flores. She listened intently as they described the driveway incident, her brow furrowing in concern. This is a clear violation of your rights as a homeowner, Ms. Flores said. The HOA has the authority to levy fines for late payments, but they absolutely cannot impound your vehicle without proper notice and due process. Jenna nodded emphatically. That's what I thought. So we can sue them, right? Make them pay for the stress and inconvenience they've caused. Ms. Flores held up a hand. Slow down. While you do have a strong case, suing the HOA is no small matter. They have deep pockets and a team of lawyers on retainer. This could get very messy very quickly. Mark shifted in his seat. So what are our options? We can't just let them get away with this. I'd recommend starting with a strongly worded letter demanding they remove the chains immediately and reimburse you for any costs incurred. Ms. Flores paused, considering. If they refuse to cooperate, then we can discuss filing a formal lawsuit. But that should be an absolute last resort. Jenna frowned, her fingers drumming on the arm of her chair. I don't know, Ms. Flores. These people need to be taught a lesson. They can't just bully homeowners like this. I understand your frustration, Jenna. Believe me, I've seen my fair share of HOA overreach. Ms. Flores leaned forward, her tone turning serious. But lawsuits against HOAs are notoriously difficult and expensive. You need to be absolutely certain you want to go down that path. Mark placed a hand on Jenna's arm, giving her a pleading look. Maybe we should try the letter first, honey. See if we can resolve this without having to take them to court. Jenna held Ms. Flores' gaze for a long moment, then sighed in resignation. All right, fine. We'll try the letter. But if they don't back down, I'm not holding back. Ms. Flores nodded. Fair enough. I'll draft a letter for you today, and we can send it out first thing tomorrow morning. As they left the office, Jenna couldn't shake the feeling that this was far from over. The next day, Jenna paced the living room, her eyes glued to the clock. It's been hours, Mark. Why haven't they responded yet? Mark looked up from his laptop, trying to sound reassuring. Relax, Honey, these things take time. I'm sure they're reviewing the letter right now and figuring out how to respond. Jenna shook her head, her frustration palpable. I don't trust them, Mark. Those people thrive on power trips. They're probably laughing about this right now, trying to figure out how to make our lives even more miserable. Before Mark could respond, the doorbell rang. Jenna rushed to the door, flinging it open to find two burly security guards flanking the HOA president, Mrs. Wilkins. What is the meaning of this? Jenna demanded, her voice quivering with anger. Mrs. Wilkins sneered, her arms crossed over her chest. We received your little letter, Mrs. Davis, and we're here to inform you that your threats will not be tolerated. Jenna's eyes widened in disbelief. Threats? I'm the one who's been wronged here. You had no right to impound my car without proper notice. Oh, but we did. Mrs. Wilkins' smile was cold and calculating. According to our bylaws, any unpaid fees can result in the immediate seizure of a resident's vehicle. You should have read the fine print. Jenna opened her mouth to retort, but Mark stepped forward, placing a calming hand on her shoulder. Mrs. Wilkins, this is clearly an excessive response. We're simply asking that you remove the chains and reimburse us for any inconvenience. Surely we can resolve this amicably. Mrs. Wilkins scoffed. Amicably? I don't think so. Mr. Davis, you and your wife have caused quite a stir in our community, and we won't stand for it. She turned to the guards. Escort them off the premises, and if they set foot on HOA property again, we'll have them arrested for trespassing. As the guards grabbed Jenna and Mark's arms, Jenna's eyes blazed with fury. This isn't over, you vindictive witch. You and your precious little HOA are going to pay for this. Mrs. Wilkins simply chuckled, the sound sending a chill down Jenna's spine. We'll see about that, Mrs. Davis. We'll see about that. The guards dragged Jenna and Mark away, leaving them both seething with outrage and a growing sense of dread. This was just the beginning. Jenna slammed her fist on the table, sending papers flying. I can't believe they had the nerve to send those thugs to our door. This is an outrage. Mark tried to calm her, but his own anger was simmering just beneath the surface. I know, honey, but we can't let them get to us. We have to stay focused and figure out our next move. Jenna paced the room, her mind racing. Our next move? Mark, they're bullies, pure and simple. We need to hit them where it hurts, right in their precious little HOA. What are you talking about? Mark watched his wife with a mixture of concern and curiosity. I'm talking about bringing in the big guns. Jenna's eyes gleamed with determination. We need to gather as much dirt on this HOA as possible and take them down for good. Mark held up his hands, trying to interject. Jenna, slow down. You're talking about an all-out war with the HOA. Are you sure that's the best approach? Of course I'm sure. Jenna exclaimed. They crossed a line, Mark. They can't just trample all over our rights and expect to get away with it. This is personal now. Mark sighed, knowing there was no talking her out of this. All right, fine. But let's at least consult with Ms. Flores first. Make sure we're not missing anything legally. Jenna nodded, already pulling out her phone. Good idea. I'll set up a meeting with her right away. Later that day, Jenna and Mark sat across from Ms. Flores, recounting the disastrous encounter with the HOA president and the security guards. Ms. Flores frowned, her brow furrowed in concern. This is troubling, to say the least. The HOA is clearly taking an overly aggressive stance, and their actions may very well be illegal. See, I told you, Jenna exclaimed. So what can we do? I want to bring them down, Ms. Flores. Make them pay for this. Ms. Flores held up a hand. I understand your frustration, Jenna, but a full-scale assault on the HOA is not a wise strategy. We need to be strategic and methodical in our approach. Mark nodded in agreement. That's what I've been trying to tell her. We can't just go in guns blazing. There has to be a better way. Miss Flores leaned back in her chair, considering their options. All right. Here's what I suggest. Let's start by thoroughly investigating the HOA's bylaws, financial records, and any past legal issues. If we can find evidence of misconduct or improper practices, we can use that as leverage to negotiate a resolution. Jenna's eyes narrowed. And if that doesn't work, then we'll have no choice but to pursue legal action. Miss Flores gave them a pointed look. But I cannot stress enough how complicated and costly that could be. We need to exhaust every other avenue first. Jenna sighed, her shoulders slumping in resignation. All right, fine. But I want this done as quickly as possible. I'm not going to let those HOA bullies win. Miss Flores nodded, already gathering her notes. Understood. Let's get started. Over the next few weeks, Jenna and Mark pored over stacks of documents, meticulously combing through the HOA's financial records and bylaws. With Ms. Flores' guidance, they uncovered a web of questionable practices, from inflated management fees to improper use of reserve funds. This is it, Mark. Jenna exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with triumph. We've got them dead to rights. Time to take these jerks down. Mark looked up from the latest financial report, his brow furrowed with concern. I don't know, Jenna. Even with all this evidence, going head-to-head with the HOA is still a huge risk. They've got way more resources than we do. Jenna waved a dismissive hand. That's why we've got Ms. Flores on our side. She knows how to play hardball with these types of organizations. As if on cue, Ms. Flores entered the room, a determined look on her face. All right, Jenna, Mark, I think we've got enough to make our move. Jenna leaned forward, her eyes alight with anticipation. So, what's the plan? Ms. Flores took a deep breath. Well, first, we're going to send a strongly worded letter to the HOA board, outlining all the financial discrepancies and bylaw violations we've uncovered. We'll demand a public audit and the immediate resignation of the current board members. Mark's eyes widened. Resignation. Isn't that a bit extreme? Ms. Flores held up a hand. Trust me, this is the best way to get their attention. If they refuse to comply, we'll take them to court and seek an injunction to freeze their accounts until the audit is complete. Jenna grinned, her fists clenching with satisfaction. I love it. Those power-hungry jerks won't know what hit them. Mark still looked uneasy. But what if they retaliate? You said yourself that the HOA has deep pockets and a lot of influence. We could end up in an even worse situation. That's why we need to strike first and strike hard, Miss Flores said, her tone resolute. The longer we wait, the more they'll try to cover their tracks. We have to act now, before they have a chance to respond. Jenna reached across the table, squeezing Mark's hand. Don't worry, honey. With Ms. Flores on our side, we're going to make those HOA bullies wish they'd never messed with us. Mark sighed, knowing there was no talking Jenna out of this. All right, let's do it. But promise me you'll be careful, Jenna. I don't want to see you get hurt. Jenna smiled reassuringly. I promise. This is going to be our big payback. The next day, a bold letter from Ms. Flores arrived at the HOA's doorstep, demanding a full audit and the immediate resignation of the current board members. Jenna watched anxiously as the days ticked by, waiting for the HOA's response. Finally, a terse reply arrived, signed by Mrs. Wilkins herself. Your claims are baseless and your demands are unacceptable. The HOA board will not be resigning, and we refuse to submit to any external audit. If you pursue this matter further, we will countersue for harassment and defamation. Jenna's face flushed with outrage. Can you believe the nerve of that woman? She thinks she can just brush this off. Mark placed a calming hand on her shoulder. Easy, honey. This is exactly what Ms. Flores was expecting. Now we take them to court. Jenna nodded, her eyes narrowing with determination. You're right. It's time to show those HOA bullies who they're really dealing with. The following week, Jenna and Mark sat across from Ms. Flores, who reviewed the HOA's response with a critical eye. As expected, they're digging in their heels, Ms. Flores said, her brow furrowed in concentration. But that just plays right into our hands. We now have sufficient grounds to file a lawsuit. Jenna leaned forward, her fingers drumming on the table. So, what's the plan? How do we take these jerks down? Ms. Flores held up a hand. Slow down, Jenna. This isn't going to be a quick or easy battle. We're going to have to be strategic and patient. Mark nodded in agreement. She's right, Jenna. We can't just rush in guns blazing. We need to play this smart. Ms. Flores pulled out a stack of documents. Here's what we're going to do. First, we'll file a lawsuit against the HOA, demanding a full financial audit and the removal of the current board members. We'll cite the evidence we'd gathered and argue that their actions have been a clear breach of their fiduciary duties. Jenna's eyes lit up with anticipation. And then what? We bury them in legal fees until they surrender. Ms. Flores shook her head. Not exactly. We're also going to file a request for a temporary restraining order to prevent the HOA from taking any further action against you, like freezing your accounts or impounding your vehicle again. Mark let out a relieved sigh. That's a relief. At least that will keep them from retaliating while we're in court. Exactly, Ms. Flores said. But make no mistake, this is going to be a long and arduous battle. The HOA has deep pockets and a lot of influence. We're going to have to be prepared for a drawn-out legal fight. Jenna's expression hardened with determination. I don't care how long it takes. I'm not going to let them bully us anymore. It's time to take the gloves off and show them who they're dealing with. Mark squeezed Jenna's hand, his eyes filled with a mixture of concern and pride. I'm with you, honey. Let's do this. The courtroom was a cauldron of tension as Jenna and Mark sat alongside Ms. Flores, facing off against the HOA's team of high-powered lawyers. Jenna's heart raced with a mix of nervousness and determination, knowing that this was the moment of truth. As the judge took his seat, Ms. Flores stood to present their case. Your Honor, my clients have been the victims of a clear abuse of power by the HOA. Not only did they unlawfully seize my client's vehicle, but they have also engaged in a pattern of financial mismanagement and bylaw violations that have directly harmed the homeowners in this community. The HOA's lead lawyer, a slick-haired man named Mr. Blackwell, stood to counter. Your Honor, these claims are nothing more than baseless allegations. The HOA has acted well within its rights and in the best interests of the community. My clients have irrefutable evidence that the Davis family has been in violation of their contractual obligations. Jenna clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms, as she fought the urge to leap out of her seat and confront the smug lawyer. Ms. Flores maintained her composure, presenting the financial records and bylaws they had meticulously compiled. The evidence clearly shows a pattern of misuse of HOA funds, as well as a disregard for the rights of homeowners. We are requesting a full forensic audit and the immediate removal of the current board members. Mr. Blackwell scoffed, his lips curling into a sneer. The HOA's actions have been completely justified, Your Honor. This is simply a case of a disgruntled homeowner who refuses to play by the rules. The judge listened intently, his brow furrowed in concentration. After what felt like an eternity, he cleared his throat, silencing the courtroom. This is a serious matter, and I will need time to carefully review the evidence presented by both sides. However, in the interest of preventing further escalation, I am granting the plaintiff's request for a temporary restraining order against the HOA. All seizure and impoundment actions are to cease immediately, and the HOA is prohibited from taking any retaliatory measures against the Davis family. Jenna felt a surge of relief wash over her, while Mr. Blackwell's face contorted with barely contained fury. As the judge adjourned the proceedings, Jenna turned to Mark, a victorious grin spreading across her face. We did it, honey. We're one step closer to taking those HOA bullies down for good. Mark pulled her into a tight embrace, his own expression mirroring her relief and determination. I never doubted you, Jenna. This is just the beginning. In the weeks that followed, the legal battle between the Davis family and the HOA intensified, with both sides digging in their heels. The HOA's attempts to have the temporary restraining order lifted were repeatedly denied, much to the frustration of Mrs. Wilkins and her cohorts. Meanwhile, the forensic audit uncovered a shocking web of financial misdeeds, including the misappropriation of funds, inflated management fees, and the diversion of reserved funds for personal use by the board members. As the evidence mounted, Jenna and Mark watched with a mixture of satisfaction and disbelief. I can't believe they were this corrupt, Jenna said, shaking her head. They really thought they could get away with it. Miss Flores nodded grimly. Well, they're about to find out just how wrong they were. The judge is going to have no choice but to remove the entire board and order a complete overhaul of the HOA's governance and financial practices. True to her word, the judge delivered a scathing ruling, stripping the HOA board of their positions and appointing a court-approved administrator to oversee the community's affairs. The board members, including the smug Mrs. Wilkins, were ordered to make restitution for the funds they had misused. As the news spread through the neighborhood, Jenna and Mark found themselves the center of attention, with other homeowners offering their heartfelt gratitude. We can't thank you enough for standing up to those crooks, one neighbor said, his eyes shining with relief. They've been getting away with this kind of thing for years. Jenna smiled, feeling a sense of vindication. We couldn't just sit back and let them bully us. Everyone deserves to live in a community that's actually run for the benefit of the homeowners, not the personal interests of a few power-hungry individuals. Mark wrapped an arm around Jenna's shoulders, pride evident in his expression. That's my girl. You really showed them what happens when you mess with the wrong family. As the Davis family celebrated their hard-won victory, they knew that the road ahead would still be challenging. But they were prepared to face whatever the HOA threw at them, confident in the knowledge that justice had been served.